Washington State's primary election is on August 4th. Candidates are vying for a spot on the general election ballot. Tonight's virtual town hall will feature candidates from the 4th Congressional District race, Washington State Senator's 16th District race, and the Superior Court Judge's Position 1 race. Hear their thoughts about topics that matter to the Tri-Cities community. NWPB Vote 2020, in partnership with the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin counties, present the Candidate Forum Virtual Town Hall.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Ravine Jimenez, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin counties. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any candidate. In presenting these forums, it is our goal to provide opportunities for voters to become better informed about the people who are running for public office. We feel this is an important concept, especially during these landmark 100th year celebration of the 19th Amendment. This being our first ever attempt to present a virtual candidate forum, we are both pleased and grateful to add Northwest Public Broadcasting to the partnerships we have received assistance from over the years. The cities of Richland and Pasco will continue to have these up for viewing on their websites as well. At this time, I would like to introduce our moderator for this candidate forum, Matt Lovelace. Matt is a clinical assistant professor of communications at the Murrow College at Washington University, where he graduated from in 2007. His career includes experience as a news reporter, anchor, and sports director at various locations, including Lewiston and Boise, Idaho, and Decatur, Illinois. Students taking his courses learn the value of versatility in the rapidly changing world of broadcast news. Matt lives in Pullman with his wife and 2 children. Matt, thank you for helping us out. It's all yours.
First of all, thank you to the League, and thank you to those watching online and on your TVs at a time when it's really difficult to get in front of your elected officials or to actually get to speak to candidates running for these positions. We have made it our duty with NWPB Vote 2020 to help you get to know the people hoping to serve your communities. Luckily, we do have the technology, so here are the rules of engagement we'll follow for this forum. Every candidate has been given the opportunity to give a 2-minute opening statement. That will be followed by 3 questions, to which there will be a 90-second time limit on responses for each. Now, for fairness, all candidates in the same race will be asked the same 3 questions. And since this is a virtual forum, they'll be entering and exiting the Zoom session at different times. So no candidate will know the questions ahead of time, nor will they hear the responses that the others give. Then they will have the opportunity to make a 1-minute closing statement. Now, to reiterate, we are conducting this forum through Zoom video conferencing. So we're at the mercy of technology, of internet connections, maybe even some at-home distractions, but voters, of course, deserve to be informed, and we are doing it the best way we know how to under the circumstances. And we continue our look at local races with the 4th Congressional District, a number of people on the ballot for that. And joining us first is Ryan Cooper. Mr. Cooper, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, sir.
First of all, we're giving our candidates the chance to make an opening statement. You have 2 minutes for that.
Awesome. My name is Ryan Cooper. I moved here in 2014 because I love the natural beauty of Washington. I love the people here in Washington. I've got family. I've got connections here in Washington. The reason why I'm running for Congress is we have a huge breakdown in what's happening with regard to legislation. You have members of Congress who basically are just fundraising machines. They go along with whatever Nancy Pelosi and with Mitch McConnell. And we have what we call enablers. Dan Newhouse is a great guy. I know him. He's been awesome. He's an enabler, though. He enables bad things to happen because he has to play along with the 2-party system. The 2-party system says, Team A, Team B, duke it out on these elections. They don't really get a whole lot accomplished. We need to have people who are independent, people like Justin Amash, people like myself. I'm a libertarian because I believe in limited government, because I believe that you can make more choices for yourself, and I believe that this government has failed us in so many ways with regard to the shutdowns, with coronavirus, with regard to criminal justice reform, with Black Lives Matter. We give so much to the government, and what do we get in return? If this was a business, the government would have shut down years ago for incompetence, bad management, etc. let's do something different this year. Instead of voting red or blue, let's vote gold, vote Libertarian, vote for myself, Ryan Cooper, and for other great candidates like Anthony Welty for State Insurance Commissioner and Joe Jorgensen for President. Thank you.
Well, question number one, Mr. Cooper, what actions, if any, will you support to create a pathway to citizenship for the undocumented, including DACA?
Yes, that's a very good question. So we just had a Supreme Court ruling, and I might add that on this issue, Neil Gorsuch, one of my favorite justices, was 100% correct. I'm glad he's on the Supreme Court. With the issues about undocumented workers, there's an easy solution. Canada's already been doing this. It's called the bond system. The businesses pay a bond for every worker that they bring in to work for a season, typically here in Washington for picking fruit, etc. And then when the season is over, if they don't return the person back to their home, they have to pay the fee. So we can do this without a huge rigmarole of government paperwork. With regard to children coming in, the documented, which was what DACA stands for. Look, I have a friend that's actually one of those DACA people. He's now an adult. He was brought here at 3 years old. He didn't have a choice. You know, he didn't say, no, I'm staying in Mexico. You know, his uncle brought him here illegally, but he was brought here. You can't just force him back. Some of these people have never even been in their own home country. I know another person locally who, for whatever reason, her mom visited family, and her mom's an American citizen, her dad's an American citizen, but she came early, and she was born in Mexico. So at 18, she had to go back to Mexico, a place she's never lived in her whole life. She barely speaks Spanish, and forced to live in Mexico because of some silly rules. Let's make it possible for people to live here. You know, look, people are paying taxes. They're not hurting people. Actually, undocumented workers create less crime than other folks. We need to stop with the hate and the xenophobia. Let's focus on the facts. Let's focus on how can we improve the economy. Right now, we need people working.
And
more
sorry,
than
Mr. Cooper, that's your time for that question. I hate to cut you off, but we'll move on to question number two. Do you see funding for Hanford cleanup in possible jeopardy if there are budget cuts at the national level? And if so, can anything be done to prevent or minimize those cuts?
Well, that's a very good question as well. I mean, that's a big issue. Look, the government created this mess years ago. They got to clean it up. It's been dragging on forever because you have competing interests on the state, local, and federal level. You've got, basically the federal government having no management oversight when it comes to receipts, reimbursements. I mean, we've seen evidence of all kinds of failures in so many levels from the government. There is a huge concern. I mean, we can't spend money forever. We're $26 trillion in debt. We've already done a huge stimulus package. We're probably going to do another stimulus package. And yeah, something's going to have to get cut, unfortunately. And I'd rather it not be that. But the more we spend money we don't have, the more things like the Hanford cleanup are not going to get paid for. Things like building roads, things that are probably a little more important than some of the other things that we fund. You know, our military is way over budget. We spend more than the top 10 countries combined. We can cut the military. We can cut a whole host of other things. We have to live within our means. We have to balance the budget. So I hate to break it to everybody, but the Hanford cleanup is probably going to be something on the chopping block because people outside of where we live don't really know about it, don't really care about it. And most members of Congress will vote against things like the Hanford cleanup if it means getting other projects for their district.
10 seconds.
So we put ourselves in a bind by this massive debt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cooper. And question number three, what will be among the greatest challenges to agriculture and the farmer in the years ahead, and how might that affect the consumer?
Well, we're seeing it right now with the coronavirus. You have rampant inflation created by quantitative easing, where the government's just buying stocks, propping up the upper incomes in America. You have the government just shelling out money, throwing money around. That causes inflation. That causes things to go up in price. And then on the other hand, you've got huge, massive subsidies to big agriculture, to Monsanto, Archer Daniels, Midland, people that give money to a lot of these political people, including some of our own congressmen here in Washington. So what we've got is a strange system where, farmers are barely getting by. They have to dump their product a lot of times because of shutdowns further along the supply chain, whether it's pork or milk. And then people can't afford to buy the stuff because the stuff that does arrive is so expensive because of government-created inflation. And then to top it all off, you've got Trump's trade war that has hurt farmers big time. We have to get the government out of agriculture. In this war on trade that makes absolutely no sense, let farmers sell directly overseas as we've done in the past, and stop this whole system of trade and bailouts and which often go to big businesses. Michael Jordan does not need an agricultural bailout. Neither does Bon Jovi and some of these other so-called farmers that are basically abusing the tax system by creating emu farms and collecting all kinds of subsidies. The average farmer doesn't get those things. So get the government out of this would help people out tremendously in our district.
And finally, before we let you go, a chance to give a 1-minute closing statement, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. So I know that in a primary race, most people are going to vote R&D. That's just a fact. And they're going to look at a libertarian and say, well, I don't know what a libertarian is. I don't know who this Ryan Cooper guy is. But actually look at all the candidates. You vote for me now. And if you decide you don't like me in the November election, you can always vote for the other guy. Because only 2 people move on. It's a strange system, this top 2 rule. In most states, I would be on the general election ballot because each party gets to pick their own nominee. Only in Washington do I have to compete in a primary and then not have to get the chance to even be on the ballot when everybody else votes. So that's my pitch to voters. If you've thought about having a different choice on the ballot, pick me. Pick somebody who's going to challenge Dan Newhouse on where he stands with regard to the size of the government. Because if you end up with a Democrat on the ballot, who's also a friend of mine, you're going to end up with people saying, well, I really don't like this guy, so I have to vote for that guy, and vice versa. Let's have a choice between 2 people that I like Dan Newhouse. It's nothing personal. I just think we could do better and have a debate on issues instead of personalities and Team A versus Team B. That's my pitch to you. I'm Ryan Cooper, Libertarian, running for a Congressional 4th District here in Washington. Thank you.
Mr. Cooper, thank you so much for joining us, candidate for the 4th Congressional District.
Thank you so much. Thank you for letting me be on the air today.
And continuing our look at the 4th Congressional District race, joined now by Tracy Justice Wright, who told me before we started just wants to be called Justice. Justice, I'll first give you an opportunity to make a 2-minute opening statement.
Hi, I have decided to run to represent you because I am running as an anti-slavery candidate. And Dan Newhouse has ran a plantation and has pushed the immigration H-2A thing through, which has benefited him by 200 acres since he has represented us. What it has benefited us is dirtier water, not providing jobs to Washington state citizens. And so I decided to run for that reason because I was raised Free Methodist. I have 2 great-grandfathers who were pastors, and we were anti-slavery as we were raised up, and I went to push that platform throughout the whole U.S. Because I think that we need to have the jobs ourselves. They need to be living wage jobs, and our companies need to be focusing, if they're going to be U.S. companies, on making sure that we have living wages, clean jobs, and clean air, and time with our families. And that's one thing that's been excellent during this COVID time, is that we've had time with our families.
And your first question in this forum, what actions, if any, will you support to create a pathway to citizenship for the undocumented, including DACA?
Well, DACA, I believe, is already the law. I believe that we already have a pathway for citizenship, and people can become citizenship if they meet certain criteria. And I think that that's what we should continue with, and we should support what we have already made commitments to. But in the future, we need to focus right now, since we're during the COVID time, on making sure that our citizens are having living wages and are living okay. That's all I have to say.
And a local issue to talk about, do you see funding for Hanford cleanup in possible jeopardy if there are budget cuts at the national level? And if so, can anything be done to prevent or minimize those cuts?
Well, one way that we could minimize those cuts is to prioritize our spending in a much different manner. Right now, we have 70% of our federal budget spent on military, which that money could easily cover cleaning up a lot of the Superfund sites throughout the U.S. I, in fact, actually started my career measuring radiation levels. I wrote the programs that, or I should say, I maintained the programs that measured radiation levels at the Hanford nuclear site. And it is important that we have clean air and water, and that would be a priority that I would bring and push through the government.
And question number 3, what will be the greatest challenges to agriculture and the farmer in the years ahead, and how might that affect the consumer?
I think that we need to take this opportunity to step back and look at how we can go back to sustainable farming, and instead of these corporate farms that are so unproud of what they do that they have made laws that we can't see how they are mass farming our things and having animals treated cruelly, which passes through to our health. And so I think that we need to focus way more on healthy farming. And from my studies on that, it will take about an 18-year turnaround for us to do that. And the first step to that is to quit dumping chemicals and to go back to old ways of switching farms and agriculture back and forth, and going to get our nutrients back in our soil so that we do have sustainable farming. And that should take about 18 years, and it's going to take quite a commitment by our people to do that. But I think it is best for our families to have healthy food and water and air and time together.
And before we let you go, I want to give you the chance to give us a 1-minute closing statement.
Well, my statement that I am the most concerned about lately is that we've been talking about is the Black Lives Matter and what we should do with our police problem. And I'm over here in Grand Coulee, and we have 18 officers that work here, and we have very little crime. I think that those resources could be used way better for an education system that we have here, because we have a 3 out of 10 education system where we have a police force that is asking for $65,000 for night vision goggles to hunt, I guess, our dogs that our get out or our once in a while drunk driver that we have here. I think that our problem is that we need to prioritize our spending, and that we need to focus on every interest is a special interest, not just big business and big corporations and big government. We need to reduce the size of government and focus locally.
All right. Well, Justice, thank you very much for joining us here today. I know it's unconventional, but we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
In our continuing look at the race for the 4th Congressional District, we speak now with Doug McKinley. Mr. McKinley, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
First of all, do you have an opening statement?
I do. I'm running for Congress because I believe the federal government needs to help regular people live a better life. And Dan Newhouse has fought every step of the way to make sure that that does not happen. 40 years of the same trickle-down, anti-worker, pro-corporate policies that Dan Newhouse has spent his entire public life fighting for have made everyone's life harder, except for a tiny cohort of multimillionaires. We need to change that. I have 4 sons who are all in their 20s. You and I both know that unless things change, my kids and yours will not have nearly the advantages and opportunities that we did growing up in this country. My goal is to make sure that every single kid in Eastern Washington has all the advantages and opportunities that I had growing up. And I know we can do it. The truth is we don't have to change very much to make America work again for regular working people. If we just get a few things right, we can turn America's problems around for everyone. We need wages to go up. We need American workers to get a bigger piece of the economic pie that they create. We need rents to come down. We need to build more affordable housing that doesn't price young people out of the market. We need a basic level of health care for every American that is affordable and that isn't tied to a job. Getting laid off shouldn't cost you your health care. We need to make college affordable. We need to stop saddling our young people with astronomical student loans just to get an education. We need to transition to clean energy, and we need to do it quickly. I believe that we can do all these things, and that when we do, people's lives will be much, much better. I believe in the United States. I believe that with everyone pitching in and doing their part, we're going to beat this coronavirus thing. But it isn't good enough to just go back to the way things were. We need to do much, much better. We need an economy that delivers a broad-based prosperity to everyone. We owe it to ourselves to have a country where a regular person is able to feed their family, own their house, pay their bills, give their kids a quality education, and have enough left over to go on vacation every now and again, and be secure in their old age. This campaign is about building that America. That is the promise we make to future generations, the promise that they will do better than their parents.
And question number one for you, what actions, if any, will you support to create a pathway to citizenship for the undocumented, including DACA?
Well, I'm in favor of DACA. I think DACA is only a first step. If you think about it, you've got in our congressional district, you've got thousands and thousands of kids who are brought here at a very young age by their parents. They're 17, 18, 19 years old. And the DACA program allows them to stay, but it doesn't allow their parents to stay. At any time their parents can be deported. And, as the father of, young kids who are in their 20s, I just think, what would happen to my own kids if I were deported back to Scotland in the middle of their education? It would be a catastrophe for our family. So I don't think it's just enough to look at the DACA kids and say, provide them a pathway to citizenship. I think we have a whole community of people who've been here, 10, 15 years, a really long time. And what have they done? They've worked hard. They've lived by the law. They've paid taxes. And to tear those parents away from their kids, to me, it's a completely failed policy. It destroys families and it destroys communities. And we need to make a pathway to citizenship for all of these people is my position.
And question number two, do you see funding for Hanford cleanup in possible jeopardy if there are budget cuts on the national level? And if so, can anything be done to prevent or minimize those cuts?
Well, I think looking at the Hanford budget in terms of the overall budget is to look at a very small part of a huge problem. The coronavirus and the economic dislocation that it's causing is going to require trillions of dollars. Right now, this morning, Joe Biden came out with a plan to provide massive amounts of money to make sure that American families are okay and get through this without hunger, without being kicked out of their houses. Within those trillions and trillions of dollars that it's going to take to get us over this economic and health catastrophe, do we have enough money to stabilize the funding at Hanford and continue the cleanup? Absolutely. There are two things that I'm certain of. One is that if we elect Joe Biden president and we keep the Democrats in control of the Congress, we're going to be okay. We're going to fund the programs that are needed to get us through this economic dislocation. And two, that stable funding for Hanford will be a part of that.
And finally, what will be the greatest challenges to agriculture and to the farmer in the years ahead, and how might that affect the consumer?
The greatest challenges to the farmer in the years ahead, I think, are going to be built around getting these things right, getting our immigration policy right, making sure that on the one hand, we have a stable, skilled workforce. You talk to any farmer that I know, and they'll tell you that we vastly undervalue the skills of the people who are working in their fields many of whom are undocumented. And if they lose those people, they're unable to be profitable and productive. It's not just me who's asking to allow a pathway to citizenship for those field workers and farm workers. It's the farmers who depend upon them. I think, American agriculture operates pretty well. We do a good job of overproducing food. That's why we export so much of it. It's one of the bright spots of the American economy. I don't think we have to do a lot except make sure that we have a stable workforce and that the programs that are already in place remain in place and continue to provide funding for people who want to go into agriculture and allow them to grow and be prosperous.
And before we let you go, I'll give you a chance to make a 1-minute closing statement.
Well, Matt, as I was saying before, this country is facing a huge choice. The Trump administration, in my estimation, has completely mishandled the coronavirus. And in doing so, they made the economic problems vastly worse. Right now, you have two competing paths forward, and they couldn't be more night and day. The House had sent a bill over to the Senate 45 days ago asking for more relief for American families, huge percentages of whom are going to bed hungry at night because of this catastrophe. And Mitch McConnell won't even consider it. We're going to find out here in the next month when the funding for unemployment runs out, which direction this country will take. And I'm hopeful that we'll take a new direction that puts people first and not the interests of companies and corporations.
Doug McKinley, candidate for the 4th Congressional District, thank you very much for joining our forum today.
Thank you, Matt. Great to be here.
And our continuing look at the candidates for the 4th Congressional District now brings us to Evan Jones. Mr. Jones, thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to take part in this forum. It's a critical public service that you enable fresh voices to be heard in American politics, and I really appreciate it. Friends, my name is Ev Jones. I am the only nonpartisan independent running for U.S. Congress in this primary. First, I want you to know that I appreciate that so many of you have reached out to me over the last month on my website, evanjones.us, to support this grassroots effort to bring a new era of effective public service to Congress. This year, we have a golden opportunity to change once and for all how our representatives work in D.C. My independent candidacy is all about urging citizens in the 4th District and across America to snap out of our partisan days, ditch all of the ideological back and forth that we face on every single issue these days. You know what? It leads us nowhere, and that's why a lot of us regular Joneses are tired of it. What we need right now in Congress is a laser focus on work that leads to meaningful progress for communities. We need leadership that is courageous, not political, that is reliably shrewd, ever capable, well prepared for the job, that is upfront with us and is always entrepreneurial, using the best ideas from all sources to get things done. It doesn't matter who gets the political credit in the end. Just keep it above board and give us the reliable information and perspective that we need to make decisions and judgments that will help our families and businesses thrive in the 2020s. That's all we're asking for. I've put together a detailed 6-point plan for changing the way Congress works on my website, evanjones.us. I've also laid out ideas on 15 key issues where independent thinking can get us off the mat in 2021 and moving forward again. Reach out to me. Let me know what you think and where you want to go moving forward. Let's get this done.
Well, your first question, Mr. Jones, what actions, if any, would you support to create a pathway to citizenship for the undocumented, including DACA?
Well, that's an excellent question. The bottom line is that current levels of immigration and demand in the United States aren't sustainable in terms of available jobs, quality of life expectations, equitable patterns of prosperity, and the realities of ecological sustainability that we now face. But we have to come with that to terms with that first. And it's not going to be an easy pill for any of us to swallow. But you're right. We have to start by coming to terms with permanently formalizing the recognition of all the hidden citizens caught up in the failed immigration system of the last 30 years. They've become productive and contributing citizens in everything but the paperwork. So we have to get it done. Then we have to work smarter on border security in the 2020s as well. We have to assess whether the 9/11 era immigration enforcement mission of DHS is still effective today, and upgrade border infrastructure and strategy accordingly. We have to deploy innovative approaches to future unauthorized crossings as they occur at our borders, such as doing more to prevent unauthorized entries when possible at the source, deploying cutting-edge technologies and realistic physical barriers that can both decrease pressure on the border zones and prevent needless suffering of unauthorized residents or asylum seekers. Look, we need to explore the drivers injustice and poverty in the Western Hemisphere as well that is causing the increased pressure at our border, and pivot our diplomatic attention back to our neighbors again in the Americas who have been neglected for too long. If we can do this, we can remain the last best hope on earth.
And question number 2, do you see funding for Hanford cleanup in possible jeopardy if there are budget cuts at the national level? And if so, could anything be done to prevent or minimize those cuts?
I absolutely don't see that. It's a commitment that has been made by the federal government. It's also a model for how the private sector and the government can work together on not only mitigating environmental risk and problems, but also on regulating on how we go about achieving prosperity, and at the same time, again, minimizing risk on the environment. So I don't see Hanford in jeopardy. In fact, I see Hanford being continuing to be a model for how we upgrade our infrastructure and our response to the challenges of environmental performance in the 2020s.
And question number 3, what will be the greatest challenges to agriculture and the farmer in the years ahead, and how might that affect the consumer?
Well, just like a lot of our, the first thing I want to say is that we have made trillions of dollars in investments in shared agricultural assets over the last 200 years. I mean, literally since the beginning of the 18th century. The first thing we have to do is to make sure that we are maintaining the federal government's responsibility to those shared assets. Things like sustainable irrigation, things like the cooperatives that have been funded in at least some way by the federal government. But in addition to that, we also have to be aware that the American farmer has been subject to decreasing commodity pricing. There's been a explosion in the last 15 years of farm bankruptcies. I think we have to account for that as we move forward in 2021 with recovering from the COVID crisis.
And finally, before we let you go, an opportunity to give a 1-minute closing statement.
Sure. Friends, this is our chance to change Congress for good. Let's set a new tone for how Americans work together for progress, to help our families and neighbors have access to solid opportunity and to thrive. Let's work to reclaim the Constitution's promise of dedicated service by our representatives. Let's prevent the influence peddlers, the political celebrities, the media talking heads, or any negative political force from altering our focus. Let's now make open-mindedness and open communications the hallmark of service in Congress. And finally, let's tame the corrupting influences of party bosses and dark money. We're not alone. There are patriots in both parties and in the vast silent throngs of American independents who seek reform and recalibration in the nasty tone of politics. My friends, it's time that we brought an end to playing the partisan game and move forward with the business of democracy. Read my detailed plan for how we do it at evanjones.us. Thanks.
Mr. Jones, thank you very much for joining us today, candidate for the 4th Congressional District. We appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
And taking a look at another candidate in the 4th Congressional District race, we're now joined by Serena Sloot. Ms. Sloot, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
First of all, we like to get to know our candidates a little bit. If you have a 2-minute opening statement.
Sure. So I'm Serena. I've lived in Washington State my entire life. I've been taking care of people within different factions for almost 20 years. I've been a nurse practitioner for the past 8 years, and prior to that, I was a nurse. I've been every kind of nurse and really involved in healthcare leadership as a nurse practitioner for the past few years. I decided to go into private practice and open a small business of my own last summer, and had been working with some of our local sporting groups and members of the community, just doing some outreach in addition to my private practice when COVID hit. And when COVID hit, it kind of changed a lot of the direction of the things that I wanted to do from a leadership perspective for our community and our districts here. And as COVID became more involved and I was reaching out to different groups of people, I started to get more and more suggestion that I should take some of my thought processes and my solutions to a kind of a more political or congressional standpoint. And so the suggestion was made that I would make a good advocate and a good representative for us in our congressional district. And so I decided to run, and here I am today, hoping that I can share with you some of my thoughts and my beliefs, and you can decide if we align and if I would be a good advocate and representative for you.
And the first question we have for you has to do with DACA. What actions, if any, would you support to create a pathway to citizenship for the undocumented, including DACA?
Well, for DACA, I think that there's two separate issues at play. Number one is that these people have been here. They've been productive members of our society. They deserve our support and a clear pathway and a role to citizenship. That being said, for the millions of our current citizens that don't get the same kind of financial support with college, support with payment aspects, I think that we need to make sure we're treating all of our education options equally. So I believe that we should have a pathway for citizenship for DACA, but I believe that we have to make sure that what we're offering is fair across the board for our citizens.
And question number two, do you see funding for Hanford cleanup in possible jeopardy if there are budget cuts at the national level? And if so, can anything be done to prevent or minimize those cuts?
Hanford cleanup has been ongoing since I was a child. Since I've grown up here, both of my parents were Hanford workers. I think that it has to remain a priority. The additional priority that we have to consider is there are a lot of factions to Hanford. You talk about like the possibility for medical isotope use with FFTF that we used to have before FFTF was closed down. I think that there is potential for concern if there are budgetary cuts, and we have to continue to prioritize Hanford, prioritize promotion of nuclear energy, and also other factions that Hanford can provide us, not only just focused on the cleanup, but also what good Hanford can do for our community and our state overall. And so there has to remain priority for funding for them.
And finally, what will be the greatest challenges to agriculture and the farmer in the years ahead, and how might that affect the consumer?
I think agriculture is struggling in the midst of this pandemic. We go through what our potato farmers are experiencing with supply and demand, what our wheat farmers are experiencing, what our crop growers are experiencing, and how do we make sure that all of our agriculture has equal access to programs that support funding and support mitigating, keeping costs down for our growers, keeping the ability of our food chains and our supply in check, because this isn't the first we're going to see in regards to pandemics and in regards to, potentially needing to isolate and potentially seeing that continued downfall as far as what our growers can get for our crops. I think we need to really focus on fair values for crops. We need to focus on legislation that promotes and maintains the farmer's ability to keep their crops going, even when harvest is not necessarily going to be as fruitful given supply and demand. I mean, agriculture is kind of the heart, particularly in eastern and central Washington, and we have to preserve it. And I think that, federal funding, federal consideration for all sorts of agriculture, not just certain factions, is important.
And finally, before we let you go, I would love to give you the opportunity to make a 1-minute closing statement.
Excellent. So, I am by no means a politician. My job has always been to take care of people, and how I choose to take care of my patients is sometimes even a little bit different than traditional means, in that I want people to have all the information. I don't need to tell you what's right. I don't need to tell you what to believe. I need to make sure that you have all of the information, all of the facts, so you can make an informed decision for yourself and your family. And my job is to make sure that we get that to you. My job is not to, dictate or tell you what to do. My job is purely to advocate for you, for your rights and your beliefs, and to make sure that you have all of the information in order to make those decisions for yourself and your family.
Serena Slood, candidate for U.S. Representative in Washington's 4th Congressional District, thank you very much for joining us on this virtual forum.
Thank you so much.
Speaking to another candidate in the 4th Congressional District race is incumbent U.S. Representative Dan Newhouse. Mr. Newhouse, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be with you.
First of all, we'd like to hear your 2-minute opening statement.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me say thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this forum together, even in the virtual world that we find ourselves. I appreciate their steadfastness in making sure the voters are educated and the candidates are given the opportunity to speak to people. So I'm running for Congress again because I continue to have work that needs to be accomplished on behalf of my constituents. I think I've been a tremendous advocate and spokesperson on behalf of the people of the 4th District, and I want to continue that work. I've been very engaged on many of the important issues to Central Washington, to the state of Washington, and also to the nation. And I think it's very important that we continue to have a strong advocate on behalf of the people that I represent. What are some of those issues? Certainly what comes to mind is the Hanford cleanup. I want to continue to make sure that the federal government maintains and follows through on its legal and moral commitment to clean up the environmental waste at Hanford. I also want to continue to work as strong as I can on behalf of our largest industry in Central Washington, that being agriculture. Being a farmer myself, I understand the challenges and the unique nuances of the agricultural industry, and I think I can continue to be a strong spokesman for that industry. And then on top of that, all of the challenges that we have seen over the last few months as related to the COVID-19 pandemic, I want to continue to work very hard to make sure that my constituents, my state, and certainly the country can move forward in as healthy a way as possible. We can reopen our economy, get our economic engines running again, and continue to be a successful nation. So I thank the League very much for this opportunity and look forward to the questions that they have prepared for me.
Well, the first question of those, what actions, if any, would you support to create a pathway to citizenship for the undocumented, including DACA?
So I've been at the forefront of this issue since I was elected. Many people may not know this, but the 4th District in Central Washington has the highest number of DACA recipients in the entire state. In fact, as a Republican, I represent the district with the highest number of DACA recipients in the country, maybe save one other district. And so this is something that's been very important to me. I have met with hundreds of these individuals. They're huge contributors to our communities. They truly have an interest in making their homes a better place for them and their families. And I'm working hard to make sure that we can give them the certainty that they need to be able to become legalized citizens in our country. They were brought here under no fault of their own. In our country, in our society, we do not punish children for the faults of their parents. And that's something that I think that I'm committed to accomplishing. This is a bipartisan effort of a lot of colleagues that feel the same way. We just politically haven't been able to get there, but we continue to work hard, and I'm committed to making sure that this happens as soon as possible.
And question number two, and you talked a little bit about this already, do you see funding for Hanford cleanup in possible jeopardy if there are budget cuts on the national level? And if so, can anything be done to minimize those cuts?
So it's always a struggle, let me tell you, no matter which party controls the White House, no matter which party controls the Congress, either the House or the Senate, ensuring adequate funding for the cleanup of Hanford is always an uphill battle. It's an expensive project that we have engaged in. It gets a lot of attention on the people in other parts of the country because so much money is coming to Central Washington. And so I've been very fortunate to have a great team of people. I work very well with particularly Senator Patty Murray in the Senate and across the aisle. We've been able to make sure and secure those necessary resources. And I'm confident if we continue to work in a bipartisan manner, continue to educate people around the country as to the importance of the project and getting the Hanford waste cleaned up, I think we will continue to be successful regardless of who's in the White House or who controls the Congress. But I will tell you, it's not easy. It requires constant work and education on our part with our colleagues in the Congress. And I pledge to continue to work as hard as I can to make sure that work continues as safely and as quickly as possible.
And this one you also touched on, agriculture. What would be the greatest challenges to ag and the farmer in the years ahead, and how might that affect the consumer?
Oh gosh, there's several things that come to mind, big challenges. Being a farmer myself, I live these, so I understand, I think, as well as anybody, the challenges that agriculture faces. Certainly in arid Eastern Washington, water is always a challenge for us. Making sure that we have an adequate supply of water available, not only for the agricultural industry, but for our growing communities in Central Washington, for the industrial base, and for the environment. We might want to make sure that fish as well can coexist with our society. As we mentioned a little bit, the immigration issues are key as well. I want to make sure that we have a legal workforce for the agricultural industry. I think that is just incredibly important. It's ridiculous that we have a multi-billion-dollar industry dependent on illegal source of workers. So I'm working hard as I can to fix that. And then we are very dependent on foreign markets. We are the closest state of the lower 48 to the Pacific Rim. Agricultural exports we depend on, and I want to make sure that those markets continue to be available to our producers who can compete with anybody in the world given a level playing field.
And before we let you go, I'll give you an opportunity here to make your 1-minute closing remarks.
Well, I appreciate that, Matt. And again, let me say thank you to the League of Women Voters for allowing me this opportunity to visit with my constituents in the 4th District. It's been an honor and a pleasure to represent you over the last 3 terms of my career in Congress. And I will continue to be as committed as I possibly can to representing you, being your voice in Washington, D.C., in a very difficult environment, one that is becoming, unfortunately, more and more political. But I've learned my lesson well in Olympia, in the state of Washington, that the best way to get things done is to work in a bipartisan fashion, working across the aisle, working with people who don't always agree with me, and I don't always agree with them, but to find common ground as much as we possibly can so that we can move issues forward and our country can continue to be successful into the future. So thank you for allowing me to serve you, and I look forward to continuing to work for the constituents of the 4th District.
U.S. Representative Dan Newhouse joining us during a moment in D.C., I am to understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
And we continue our coverage now, moving races for the Senate seat for District 16 for the state of Washington. Joined now by Perry Dozier. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you much for this opportunity.
First of all, I want to give a Senate candidate an opportunity to speak with an opening statement.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the most important thing about myself is I've been a lifelong resident of the 16th District. My wife and I have been business partners for 40 years on our farm, and I've been a representative of the Washington Association of Wheat Growers, and then that was about 20 years ago, and went on and was a county commissioner for 8 years. I think that what I have is a very deep understanding of this district. My in-laws actually were in Franklin County. My mother-in-law grew up there in North Pasco, and they used to raise sheep, and then my father-in-law had ground there. I'm very strong for our economic development in schools, which I think is very important. I think K-12 education, we need to keep funding the way it is. I'm very, very happy to get this opportunity to move forward after being with the county commission and seeing a lot of what happens from Olympia coming down to us here and how it affects this 16th district. We have a very, very diverse 16th district, and spanning from Columbia County, Walla Walla County, Benton, and Franklin counties. And my strengths have been in agriculture over the years, but also in economic development and moving forward, I think, with the in Benton and Franklin County with the residential growth development. And my hopes are that once I'm elected over there, I will be the voice that we need here in the 16th district for the people to move forward with our ideals and not have what happens in Olympia come down to really stifle us here or our economy here.
Thank you. And the first question I have for you, 2020 obviously has presented some pretty big issues when it comes to state budgets. What mix of actions do you believe need to be taken to close the budget gap for the next biennium?
Well, I think probably right off at the very beginning, which I am not a part of the state legislature, but I think once we got into shutting down the economy, I really think that there should have been some tax relief for our small businesses. These small businesses obviously have had to deal with a cash outflow, which has really strapped them. So we're moving through this period, and I think as we move into the new biennium budget, it's going to be very important that we remember that we cannot do unburdensome taxes on these businesses. It's the economy that's going to drive us moving forward. Getting people back to work is going to really be the driver for us in receiving those taxes that we have received before to supply those essential needs of us here in the state. And that probably is going to be the biggest focus that we have moving forward.
And question number two, state colleges and universities took a pretty big financial hit after the 2008 recession, and the economic impact of the pandemic could maybe even have a greater effect. How important do you think it is for our state students to have access to affordable post-secondary education, and where might that money come from?
You know, I think that's a really good point. Both of my sons just graduated recently from Washington State University. And that is something that we have to continue. I talked about K-12, but I think beyond that, we need to make sure that these students have that ability to move forward with other education, whether it's tech school, whether it's going beyond. How we're going to fund that, that's going to be the biggest question, is because I think we have to fund the essential services that are there, and then we have to look at where we can make cuts elsewhere that are not as essential. And I don't want to say essential, non-essential, but where we can make cuts rather than trying to raise tuition. These students are already hurting with being able to find jobs. A lot of them have not been able to work. So we have to find where we can bring those dollars in from other areas to fund education for those students to move forward.
And a third question, more of a long-term one, looking forward 10, maybe 20 years. Do you foresee possible water shortages in Eastern Washington for both agriculture and for personal use? And if so, are there steps that could be taken to better prepare for that?
Well, water is become one of the biggest issues. When I've been an irrigated farmer for 30 years, And in our district, water is a very essential part of this entire district for irrigation. I've sat on 2 different boards that we've had to work with environmental groups and with the tribes to be able to supply water for farms, for families, and for fish. And I understand that extremely well. We have to address stream flows for the environment and for the fish, but we also have to protect those water rights for those individual farmers and for the municipalities that need that for their growth. And I have a long background in doing that when I worked with the city of Pasco and Franklin County, when Pasco was exploding in growth going north, and we had farm ground that was converted into basically housing. And I worked with a lot of, with the Department of Ecology for 30 years on protecting our water rights. I think water is very, very scarce. It is the king of moving forward. A lot of times your water right is worth more than what your property is. And I understand that, and I will protect those rights, but protect the needs for everybody.
And before we go, 1 minute for your closing comments.
Okay, I think I am the most qualified candidate in this race for the 16th District Senate seat. I have the most experience in the district, living here my entire life. I have a lot of experience over in Olympia, and I have a lot of experience with public health, with the environment, with the economy. As a commissioner, I was a commissioner during the first recession in 2008 through 2010. And I want to take that experience over to Olympia because I have a desire to represent the people here and the needs that they have without overburdensome regulation or taxation, and to move this forward just like what we did 10 years ago. I feel that I can do that very well.
Perry Dozier, candidate for the Senate seat for District 16, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And continuing our look at the candidates for the Senate seat for District 16 in Washington State, joined now by Danielle Garby-Reeser. Danielle, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Well, sort of a non-conventional way of doing this candidate forum, but we do get an opportunity to hear from you, and we would like to hear if you have an opening statement.
Great. Thanks so much. Thank you, everyone. I'm Danielle Garby-Reeser. I'm running to bridge the divides between Eastern and Western Washington and our rural and urban communities. We need more common sense, fiscally responsible solutions in Olympia. I'm originally from Moses Lake and have fond memories of visiting the Tri-Cities to go to birthday parties at Chuck E. Cheese, and my first visit to Walla Walla, falling in love with the Whitman College campus and this beautiful community. I've dedicated my life to serving our country and our communities. My first day on the job was September 10th, 2001. My diplomatic career started by evacuating, and when we came back, I asked to be sent to the Muslim world. Whenever we face challenges, I've stepped up to serve, and I very proudly served our country during the Bush and Obama administrations in the White House and the Department of Energy for over 14 years. I think that global perspective is key to challenges facing our communities today. From the coronavirus to climate change to our agricultural exports, we need an international perspective in Olympia. But I missed home, so I moved back in 2015 and became the CEO of Sherwood Trust, a local foundation that invests to create jobs and build community infrastructure. We created partnerships with government, business, and nonprofits to tackle a range of challenges, from early learning to ending youth homelessness. And as we think about the challenges facing our community today, we need that kind of collaborative leadership and creative problem solving in Olympia to address healthcare, create more jobs, and improve our childcare system. And I'm also a farmer's wife, which means that I know the importance of stewarding our natural resources and making wise decisions for today and for future generations. I'm not a career politician. I'm a public servant, and I'd be honored to serve you.
And your first question, 2020 has presented, and future years will present some major issues when it comes to state budgets, of course. What mix of actions do you believe need to be taken to close the budget gap for this next biennium?
Thank you. It's such a critical issue that we need to address in our state, and we need to do it through a mix of solutions. We need to continue to ask the federal government for resources to support our cities and states and our overall comprehensive solution. We need to look at the rainy day fund. We need to consider where new spending that was approved this year may not be able to go forward. If we need to look at progressive revenue measures, we need to do those last. I'm not in favor of an income tax, but I am in favor of thinking through solutions that will look at the problem today, make smart budget decisions, and not defer or cut things so much that we're just creating more problems in the future. I think our comprehensive solution needs to bring our stakeholders to the table and look at ways that we can stimulate our economy with smart cuts and smart investments.
And question number 2, state colleges and universities took a big financial hit after the 2008 recession. Some forecasts say the economic impact of this pandemic could be even greater. How important do you think it is for the state students to have access to affordable post-secondary education? And where might money for that come from?
Right. It's such a critical way that we can stimulate our economies by having a strong economic system fueled by our education system. And that's from a variety of levels, all the way from early learning, K through 12, but also this important post-secondary space. We've, as you said, looked at our state system. We have 2 amazing community colleges here in the 16th LD, in CBC and Walla Walla Community College. They need our help to stay strong and make sure that they can help workers retrain for the jobs of the future, and that the curriculum they're offering provides 21st century skills. We also need to make sure that other pathways are open to our students by supporting apprenticeship programs with unions, for example. There are all kinds of ways that we can look at how we support that system and keep it open to a broad diversity of people across our communities and of all ages.
And a long-term question here, looking forward 10, maybe even 20 years. Do you foresee possible water shortages in Eastern Washington for both agriculture and personal use? And if so, are there steps that could be taken to better prepare for that?
Water is absolutely critical to our region. And I can tell you from our family's farm that we have creeks and streams that now go dry. So it's not just a future problem of drought, it's a current problem. We've had really extreme weather this year, major flooding, as well as major droughts. And looking at comprehensive solutions to water management is key. We've seen challenges to people wanting to bottle and sell their water. We've seen private equity firms wanting to come in and buy our water rights. We need to make sure that we're addressing water from a fairness standpoint as well as a regulatory issue, so that farms like ours that have senior water rights are respected. We shouldn't see dry creeks that just lead to fish loss and habitat loss, as well as damage to our crops and our agricultural system. So as we think about the water that we need both for agriculture and our economy, as well as you said, for personal use in our communities, we need to take a sustainable approach that brings all the stakeholders together and really looks at the long-term planning needs.
And before we let you go, an opportunity here for 1 minute of closing comments.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Matt, to Northwest Public Broadcasting and the League of Women Voters of Benton, Franklin County for bringing us together today. It's so wonderful to get to celebrate this part of the campaign with the League of Women Voters, because this year marks 100 years since women earned the right to vote and 55 years since the Voting Rights Act. It's critical that we are informed and engaged citizens. Today, I'm asking for your vote. I'm also asking you to vote. It's so critical that we all participate in the August 4th primary. I'm running because I want to fight for Eastern Washington. I love this region, and I want us to have a fair shake in Olympia. If you're interested in learning more and potentially joining our team, I invite you to visit our website, garbyreeser.com. Together, we can build a very bright future for Eastern Washington and the 16th LD.
Danielle Garby Reeser, candidate for the 16th Legislative District. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Matt.
And continuing our look at the candidates for the 16th Legislative District for the state Senate seat, we are now joined by Bill Jenkin. Bill, thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you for having us and doing this for all the candidates. It's important to get our names out there.
It's certainly a unique set of circumstances that brings this forum together, but luckily we are able to reach you over the phone. First off, we're giving our candidates an opportunity to deliver a 2-minute opening statement.
Okay, yep, I'd love to do that. So basically, I got into the race. I was going to stay in the House because I thought getting a lot of work done, but then I was approached by Senator Michael Patton in the Senate, of course, and he was saying that I should run. So I thought about it, talked to my wife, and decided that I can be much more effective in the Senate. I can utilize my experience that I've gained, and I've gained a lot of it. I've been able to build relationships. I've been able to go into leadership in the House as far as Deputy Sergeant at Arms, and also was named to be the ranking member on the Housing Committee. The committees I've served on is going to bring a whole lot to the district. This year being on capital budget, as well as the Housing Committee, of course. I've always served for all 4 years on the Commerce and Gaming because I own a winery, and there's a lot of wineries, a lot of grapes and that type of thing in the district. They also asked me to serve on the new tourism committee for the state because of that exposure. Also the census and the economic development and international relations committees. So I've worked with both sides. I have common sense legislation, was able to get 4 bills through this, and they're all common sense bills this biennium. I know the entire district needs to be served. I'm a business owner, past school board president, past Rotary District Governor, Chamber of Commerce President twice, and I've been endorsed by, our Treasurer, Dwayne Davison, senators, House members, mayors, council members, and sheriffs throughout the district, and they've seen that I've been able to be effective, and that's what I want to continue to do.
Well, we'll start with our few questions. First question has to do with budgets. 2020 has presented some major issues when it comes to state budgets. What mix of actions do you believe need to be taken to close the budget gap for the next biennium?
Well, $8 billion, maybe $9 billion is a lot of money to make up. And that's what we're going to have to do. And it's going to take proven leadership to do that and experience to do that. We have constitution. We have to fund schools. K through 12 is over 50% of the budget right there. And then there's other things in the budget that we have to. So that just leaves a little bit on the perimeters that we can try to make up that. We certainly can't have any taxes to do it. And that's why we need to get back to work so that we can start getting a budget surplus again. We're going to have close to $4 billion worth of surplus, and then this COVID hit. So we've got to get back to work. We've got to open up the budget. We can get that revenue without having to pay the taxes and the people making up the differences. So budget is going to be the top thing here. If there is a special session, I'm sure that's what we're going to be discussing a whole lot.
And state colleges and universities certainly took a big hit after the 2008 recession. Some forecast thinking that this pandemic could have an even greater impact. How important is it for our state students to have access to affordable post-secondary education, and where might that money come from?
Well, post-secondary is important. We've and they've been hit hard. It's the higher education. That's one of my biggest concerns with this budgetary because they're on the chopping block. And I've talked to a lot of administrators, presidents, and that type of thing from different universities and our community colleges, which do a fantastic job. I believe that all the kids should have the opportunity to go to higher education. Not all of them want to, and not all of them should be forced to go, because we do need a lot of help as far as our trade schools and that type of thing to train them. So we've got to leave all the doors open, but we shouldn't shut any of them due to the budget.
And finally, a longer term question here, looking forward 10 or even 20 years, do you foresee possible water shortages in Eastern Washington for both agriculture and personal use? And if so, are there steps that could be done to better prepare?
Yeah, that's what's going on right now in the 16th district, primarily in the Walla Walla area with the Walla Walla watershed. Department of Ecology has come in and they're doing a different plan, and it's going to be a lot like the Yakima Valley plan was or is. And so I can see that happening. I can see already in Walla Walla there's meters on the wells and that type of thing, and that same thing in Yakima. I would hate to see meters on all the wells, but I see that that's going to most likely happen as time goes on. We need to create as many sources to be able to get water as possible. Last year, 2 years ago, I worked on a DNR bill that enabled some water to come up to Horseheaven Hills up in the Patterson area. And so they were able to get some water off of the Columbia River so that they would be able to grow different type crops other than dryland wheat.
And finally, before we let you go, an opportunity to make a closing statement with 1 minute.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I'm the only candidate in this race with current legislative experience. Period. It's 4 years. I've worked the entire district. I know the entire district, and every little bit. It's from Prosser all the way to Columbia County, Dayton, and into the Blue Mountains. Every district, every part of the district is different. So I know what needs to be done. I know the people that are working in those areas. Most of them have endorsed me. I work with common sense, like I said before, and I think everything is reasonable. I've got plenty of endorsement, but the one endorsement that I need are the voters' endorsements, and I hope to get that. I'm working hard towards that, and will continue to do so once I'm elected. I ask for your vote.
And that's Bill Jenkin, candidate for the State Legislative District 16 for that Senate seat. Bill, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your willingness to do this.
And we begin our look at the race for Superior Court Judge, Position 1, joined by candidate Sharon Brown. Sharon, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me, Matt.
And first of all, I want to give you an opportunity to make your 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you. And thank you to the League for having us here today. I just want to say, as a business lawyer, a city council member, mayor pro tem, and finally as a state senator for the past 8 years, I've developed a broad and unique skill set that would make me an outstanding judge and best candidate in the race today. I have a respect for the process and believe judges should always consider the will of the people as expressed through their elected representatives and the laws that they pass. I'm running for Benton Franklin Superior Court because I'm a constitutionalist, and I believe it is important for judges to follow laws as written and not legislate from the bench. Additionally, as a trained mediator, I know how to be absolutely neutral and fair in resolving disputes. Only by having fair, ethical judges who follow the law as written can public confidence in the court and its ability to guarantee justice be achieved. I received my JD from the University of New Hampshire School of Law, Franklin Pierce Center for Intellectual Property, which is ranked in the top 5 programs in the country for intellectual property law. I also did post-JD study and received a certificate from the Strauss Institute for Dispute Resolution at Pepperdine School of Law, which is ranked #1 in dispute resolution. Finally, a judge's decisions reach far beyond the courtroom, and people deserve a judge with real-world experience who understands their challengers. And I believe that I can deliver what the people are looking for and what the people deserve.
And for your first question, it's sort of a multi-parter. Do you support the need for things like veterans courts, drug courts, and family courts? And have you ever witnessed or read reports on the effectiveness of these courts? And if so, what would you want the public to know about them?
Yes, as a legislator, I have been very involved with the formation of these courts. And in Benton County, we actually have Veterans Court, and we have drug court, and we have a mental health court. We don't unfortunately have that yet in Franklin County, and it would be wonderful if we had the resources to do that. I believe that these courts are really important to reducing recidivism. However, that's not to be said that laws should not be followed and people should not be held accountable.
And question number 2, is justice better served when there are mandatory sentences for some crimes, or when judges have a little more discretion in their sentencing? And please explain your position there.
Thank you. I really believe that having mandatory sentences is a good way to effectuate a level playing field across the state. However, that having been said, I think it's really important for judges to be able to have latitude to perhaps go outside those ranges should they deem it be necessary. It's really a balancing act, and I think it depends on the case, the circumstance, and the totality of the situation and circumstances.
And question number 3, how would you rate the treatment and experience of the poor in our local judicial system, especially in the courts?
Access to justice is another topic that I have been incredibly involved with as a legislator, and I think it is very important that all people have access to justice under the law. We certainly have that in our criminal system. It would be nice to have that in family court and also in general contract disputes, business disputes, and things like that. And I believe that there are a lot of entities out there who have sought to meet that need, and certainly from a legislative perspective, we had funded those entities, but again, there is definitely room to grow to provide additional resources in those areas.
And before you go, would like to get your 1-minute closing statement.
Thank you. I know that there are a number of quality candidates running to serve on the court this year. While some can tout the role as a prosecutor, others their time on corporate boards and in corporate boardrooms, I believe I am the one candidate with the unique experience of having been a city prosecutor, a small business owner, and a practicing attorney, and a lawmaker tasked with listening to people and helping put their concerns into law. Unlike my opponents, I have a wide variety of experiences and a unique background that gives me the ability to fully understand the legislative intent behind the Revised Code of Washington, the RCWs. In addition to this diverse background, I'm also extremely hardworking and committed to providing the taxpayers with good value. Through my 8 years in the legislature, I have a rare 100% attendance record and have never missed a single vote. I pledge to dedicate that same level of effort as a Superior Court judge for Benton Franklin counties. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you, Sharon Brown, candidate for Superior Court Judge, Position 1. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And we continue our look at the race for Superior Court Judge, Position 1. I'm joined now by candidate Talisha Sams. Talisha, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to give you an opportunity to make your opening statement.
Sure. I'm Talisha Sams. I'm running for Benton Franklin County Superior Court Judge, Position 1. I grew up in the Walla Walla area and attended schools there. I worked as a nurse and a respiratory therapist at St. Mary's in Walla Walla. After leaving my job in the healthcare, I went to WSU here in the Tri-Cities and received my bachelor's degree. I attended law school at Gonzaga University in Spokane. After completing my law degree, I opened up my own practice. I've practiced primarily in family law, bankruptcy, consumer law, wills and estate, and kind of a general practice. I've also worked at the public defender's office while I was in Spokane. In between when I was in Spokane and coming down to the Tri-Cities where I'm at now, I worked as a prosecutor in Adams County. I prosecuted misdemeanors, gross misdemeanors, felony cases, and defended our convictions in the Court of Appeals. I am currently working at Adult Protective Services, where I prosecute individuals that have been accused of abusing vulnerable adults. I am also a Title XI guardian ad litem, and I also work as a King County District Court Judge Pro Tem.
Great. And we'll get to your questions. The first one has to do with the court system. Do you support the need for a veterans court, drug court, family court, those types of things? And have you ever witnessed or read reports on the effectiveness of these courts? And if so, what would you like the public to know about them?
I think that we do need those kind of courts. I've always been the type that I believe that in administering justice, that it's not a one-size-fits-all. There's always room for improvement. I think that the different juvenile courts and the veterans courts and even mental health courts are a very productive part of administering the judicial system. One of the problems I've seen, though, when you get in smaller communities, the resources to fund those can be quite difficult, and also participation by just the attorneys in general. I have seen in the Spokane area when I was up there, these kind of courts be very successful, especially the drug court, because the whole idea, my understanding is that with the legal system is to rehabilitate people. There is a punishment aspect of it, but most of these are individuals that are going to be back out on the street, and I believe that the system should be set up in a way that helps these individuals so we don't have repeat offenders.
And question two, is justice better served when there are mandatory sentences for the same crimes, or when judges have a little more discretion in that sentencing?
I believe that the judges should have some discretion. As we've all, I'm sure, seen when we had these 3-strike laws where individuals that were sent away for life for just minor crimes, but since it was a 3rd strike, the mandatory sentencing was life. I believe a judge should have some discretion. I also believe that they should look at the way the law is written, the cases as guidelines. But I do believe that they should be allowed some discretion. I do know that in our criminal system, there's usually a offender score and a range of sentencing. But to answer your question, yes, I do think that they should have discretion.
And question number 3, how would you rate the treatment and experience of the poor in our judicial system, especially in the courts?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, how would you rate the treatment of the poor in our judicial system locally, especially in the courts?
I think they're treated very poorly, and I don't specifically blame that on a particular judges or the judges in general. I think the system is set up in a manner that is to their disadvantage when they're trying to get through the court system. For example, we have a situation where someone commits a criminal violation and bail is set. Someone who is not poor has no problem meeting bail, where the poor individual stays in there until they're arraigned and then have their hearing date quite often. There needs to be situation where I think more attorneys volunteer their time. There needs to be more funding locally so that these individuals have the resources to be able to put forth their defense and effective representation. I also believe that certain free clinics that I've participated in when I was in Spokane would be beneficial to the poor trying to get through the judicial and legal system.
And before we let you go, I'd love to hear your closing comments.
I'm running for this particular position because I think I can make a difference. I've looked at all my experience where I've practiced in administrative law, criminal law, civil law, and also as a decision maker in King County District Court. I believe that I'm more qualified than my opponents in this aspect. And I've practiced well over 20 years, and I think all that experience and my experience prior to becoming an attorney in my first career or even in the military service would be a great asset to my community.
Talisha Sams, candidate for Superior Court Judge, Position 1. We really appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us virtually here on this forum.
Thank you.
Continuing our look at the Superior Court Judge candidates for position 1, Shelley Ajax joins us now. Shelley, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And first, we want to give you a chance to make a 2-minute opening statement.
Certainly. I am running for Benton Franklin Superior Court Judge Position 1. I have a total of 30 years combined legal experience in both civil and criminal experience in this area here in Benton Franklin County. I have watched all of my adult life, the Superior Court, the inner works, and how our businesses here are running. My platform is to bridge the distension in everything between Benton and Franklin counties and get the juvenile justice facility fixed. It either needs to be updated or it needs to be completely revamped and rebuilt. It has been a hot topic for some time, but the Justice Building is falling apart. It's never been renovated, and it's quite simply become a safety problem for the children. And I think that when we look at our future, we look at our children first. And we need to start with the juvenile justice facility. Things break there daily and don't get repaired. And there are no attorney-client confidentiality rooms with which the attorneys can speak to their clients in safe distance, knowing that nobody else is hearing. As a result, it's created legal problems and complications. And I believe that we need to really take a look at that area and see what we can do better for our community. Thank you.
And question number 1 has to do with specialty courts. Do you support the need for veterans courts, drug courts, family courts? And have you witnessed or read reports on the effectiveness of these? And if so, what do you want the public to know about them?
I would say that I am most definitely in support of mental health courts, the veterans courts, drug courts. All of those are really in a very specific area that are targeted to actually help rehabilitate some of the members who go through the criminal justice system. And if we can find ways to do that work and are effective, I am very supportive of that. I believe that jail doesn't always solve the problems. And if an individual truly does want treatment, it's appropriate that we put them in the appropriate place. For some, jail or prison is the only route to go. But those who truly need help, who have fallen into the depths of the cracks and can't receive help otherwise because they're poor or they're homeless or mentally ill, drug addicted, those people are the people that are most deserving of our attention in our community to try to rehabilitate them and lower our recidivism rate. That should be the goal of our justice system. It shouldn't always be to punish. And while there's a healthy balance occurring right now, in prior decades, we've seen the pendulum swing back and forth between rehabilitation and punishment. And I think the mixture that we have today is a rather fair mixture of both.
And the next question has to do with sentencing. Do you think justice is better served when there are mandatory sentences for the same crimes, or when judges have a little more discretion in sentencing?
I think some judicial discretion still exists. There are sentencing guidelines for everybody to try to ensure that the sentences are fair for all of the individuals across the state. They were seeing some disparity in those sentencing, and that's why the Sentencing Guidelines Commission came about, to repair that. The judge still does have the ability to take a sentence above the standard range or below the standard range. And generally speaking, I think that those are important functions for a judge to be able to have. In certain crimes, such as victimless crimes or drug crimes, things where there are no contact order violations, but the individual was invited by the person to violate, those are all really important mitigating circumstances. And there are also always exceptional reasons, like immediate recidivism after somebody gets out of prison and they are caught with another crime. And generally speaking, I think the attorneys and the prosecutors both work together to take a look at those situations and bring them to light to the judge so that the judge can make a decision. So I think some discretion is really very necessary.
And finally, how would you rate the treatment of the poor in our local judicial system, especially in the courts?
I would say that it's very poor. we have a situation where we take individuals who are homeless and they can't be in certain areas or parks or things to sleep at night. They have nowhere to go. Oftentimes our mission is full and they can't get a bed, especially in the winter. We run out of funding for them to get into housing or to at least get some temporary housing to be able to stay. And most of our poor oftentimes are mentally ill as well. And so there's a combined mixture of problems. And we need a new facility for the poor to be able to go to so that they aren't on our streets, so that they aren't running into the problems that they run into. So they have a catapult to try to get their life together and move forward, find housing, find a job, get their driver's license and birth certificates, the basic necessities. And we certainly just don't have all the resources we need here. And while we're moving in the proper direction to build a new facility, it will take time. And finding a way to have all people agree where and when a new facility should be built is very difficult. And it has shown to be difficult for our community. And we definitely need to work together to ensure that our poor are taken care of and can rise up.
Shelley, thank you. And before we let you go, I would love to hear your closing statement. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. And I think that what I wanted to impress upon you at this time is that with my 30 years of combined experience, I have also been recognized for my community service and pro bono work across the state, regionally, and locally throughout the years. And I continue to arbitrate cases, and I have been doing that on a volunteer basis for 10 years, which is the closest you could get to a judicial position. I have ruled on and decided various arbitrations, dozens of them. On top of that, I think it is very important for a Superior Court judge to have trial experience in Superior Court. Without it, you don't know how the structure works properly or what does and does not need to be changed, altered, or amended. And I have tried over 100 cases in Benton Franklin Superior Court, and I'm proud to have served our community, and I hope to continue to serve our community in this capacity.
Shelley Ajax, candidate for Superior Court Position 1. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Continuing our look at the candidates for Superior Court Judge Position 1, I'm now joined by Bronson Brown. Mr. Brown, thank you very much for hopping on our virtual town hall today.
Thank you.
First, as a candidate, I want you to give us a 2-minute opening statement if you have one.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Bronson Brown. I was born and raised here in the Tri-Cities, born in Richland, raised in Kennewick. The only time I've lived outside of the Tri-Cities is when I went and got my education at Central Washington University for my undergraduate. And then I went to law school in San Diego at California Western Law School. And between that time, got married, started having children, and started a family. And we decided to return here to the Tri-Cities. To highlight my legal experience, I've started my legal career as a staff counsel with the Kennewick School District, and as legal counsel was exposed to an array of different things. I continued my legal career representing the Kennewick School District, but then also doing some legal defense work, indigent defense work with Benton County. Continued from there and worked for Floor Hanford as a Hanford legal counsel for a year, and then came back into private practice and started into municipal work representing cities. And currently, I've been with my firm Bell Brown Rio since 2009, and we represent the cities of Richland, West Richland, and Pasco, and do their municipal criminal prosecutions. I'm also the city attorney for Union Gap and the city of West Richland, and then general counsel for the Benton Clean Air Agency. And also I continue to represent the Kennewick School District as their general counsel. And I'm also the general counsel for the Grandview School District. And when I'm not busy with all of those folks, I do volunteer my time at Benton Franklin Legal Aid. I'm currently the board president. There we help provide access to justice and to the courts for people that need it and can't afford it.
And your first question is about specialty courts. Do you support the need for veterans courts, drug courts, and family courts? Have you witnessed or read reports on the effectiveness of these? And if so, what would you want people locally to know about them?
Okay, so I think to some extent, specialty courts are effective for veterans courts. The judge is able to be familiar with a certain background of folks, and for veterans, they have a certain background. They've been exposed to certain things, and the court can understand that. And the prosecutors and the defense attorneys going into that arena, the expectations are clear on what's going to go on in the court, what the purpose of it is, and why those folks have been admitted to that court. For family law courts, I think I did see that when I was in California going to law school. In California, they had specialty courts just for family law. I saw that as effective just because there are so many cases going through those courts, so much need, and it was effective in that you just had a special arena of judges that were just focused on the family law dockets, attorneys just focused on the family law dockets, and it seemed to run pretty efficiently. I would look forward to something like a family law court at some point here in our community. And then the other specialty court that they are starting is the mental health court, and I think that is a big benefit because there are a lot of people that suffer from those mental health issues that regular court just doesn't fulfill their needs and isn't adequate for them.
And question number 2, do you think justice is better served when there are mandatory sentences for the same crime, or when a judge has a little more discretion when it comes to sentencing?
So I think both. For mandatory sentencing, a lot of times a judge can feel, maybe he feels sorry for the victim, sorry for the person who is being convicted. But if you have a mandatory sentence, then he's bound by that and he sentences him that. I like what we have now, where you'll have, for example, you'll have a criminal be convicted of a crime, and then he has some discretion in a range, and so he could sentence. So, if, for example, someone's convicted of a certain type of felony, maybe with their lack of criminal history, the range is 0 to 4 months, and then he has discretion within that time to sentence someone. That's effective because then he can listen to the victims of the case, he can listen to the prosecutor's recommendation, the defense's recommendation, and then use his own discretion to then sentence to what he feels just. As opposed to a judge that maybe doesn't have any discretion, and if they're so stringent, where if someone's convicted of a crime, and that crime then carries a penalty of 3 months in jail or a year in prison, and there's no discretion, then that kind of takes out the reasons of why you'd want victims to make statements, prosecutors make recommendations, defense attorneys to make recommendations, so forth.
And question number 3, how would you rate the treatment of the poor in our local judicial system, especially in the courts?
So I've always felt that the poor, to some extent, are inadequately represented on the civil side. On the criminal side, we do have some very good indigent defenders, criminal defenders, and some of them are good, some of them are just okay. But on the civil side, what I've seen, especially serving on the Benton Franklin Legal Aid Board, is there are a lot of people who aren't adequately represented in the family law arena. For example, they may be going through a divorce or a split, and they don't have the money. Their spouse has ran off, has all the money, and now they've been served with papers. They want to keep custody of their children. They have nowhere to turn. They can't get a court-appointed attorney because they're not afforded one under the law. And so they are a lot of times inadequately represented. The only way they can be represented is if they're able to find a social services group, kind of like the Benton Franklin Legal Aid or something like that, to help them, or if they know any attorneys in town that would take their case for almost no charge or no charge, which a lot of times is difficult, especially given the things that they're going through at that time, and their life's been turned upside down.
And before you go, we'd love to hear 1 minute of closing comments.
Great. Thank you. So I think for a judge to be really effective, they got to make sure they have experience and they've heard both sides of the cases and a big range of different types of cases. Like I said in my opening statement, I've been there. I've prosecuted criminals on the criminal side. I defended people on felonies and misdemeanors, spent several years as general counsel for several entities doing civil litigation, and some of those cases, complex civil litigation. As a representative, the city's been involved in a lot of land use type cases. And because of that, I think that it's built up my experience. It's helped me as I go on the bench to be more fair and considerate and be able to see both sides. And then as a final point, I'm running because I want to give back to my community and serve the community that I've grown up in all of my life.
Bronson Brown, thank you very much for joining us on this virtual forum. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And the next candidate we're speaking to for Superior Court Judge Position 1 is Dave Peterson. Mr. Peterson, we appreciate you joining us on this forum.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. And we want to give our candidates to start some chances for opening comments.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to connect with you. I am Dave Peterson, and I want to be your next Benton Franklin County Superior Court Judge. I will hold offenders accountable for their crimes and ensure that dignity and respect are fundamental beliefs employed by the court. Regardless of the matters before me, I will bring integrity, fairness, and impartiality to the bench. I have a strong belief as your judge that I am a steward of your constitutional rights. I am the only candidate with extensive judicial and legal experience, knowledge, and ability to run your court effectively. I am proud of my years of service as a full-time judge for Pasco Municipal Court, as well as my 20 years of service as a judge pro tem in Benton and Franklin Counties Superior and District Courts. I attended CBC, University of Washington, and I graduated from Thurgood Marshall School of Law in Houston, Texas. I returned to the Tri-Cities as a deputy prosecutor for Franklin County. In addition to that, I have over 23 years of experience as a criminal defense attorney, civil and family law litigator, a mediator, and an arbitrator. My legal experience is much broader than that of my opponents. My wife, Dina, and I have been married over 27 years. We live and raise our children here in the Tri-Cities. I have called this community my home for my entire life, with the exception of my military service and to attend school. We attend West Highlands United Methodist Church. I'm a graduate of Leadership Tri-Cities Class 6. I was an adjunct professor at CBC. I used to teach in the Law Enforcement Reserve Academy, and I've coached the mock trial team at Tri-Cities Prep for 19 years. I have served many years on the Ben Franklin Legal Aid Society Board of Directors and associated with the National Adoption Day Committee. I will work hard to earn your support as the next Benton Franklin County Superior Court Judge, and I will work even harder to maintain your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And question number 1 is about specialty courts. Do you support the need for veterans courts, drug courts, and family courts, those types of things? And have you ever witnessed or read reports on the effectiveness of these? And if so, what do you want the public to know about them?
Absolutely. I am a very big advocate for specialty courts. And there's 2 types of specialty courts. There's therapeutic courts, such as veterans court, drug court, mental health court. Our court system does not address the underlying problems that people in court have, the addictions and the mental health problems. Those therapeutic courts do an excellent job, in my experience of watching them and being involved in them, of addressing those. They have a much higher accountability for the actual offenders, and their supervision is much more intense than in the regular system. They're expensive to operate, but they address the underlying problem. And the results that I have seen are that they do provide a benefit that we don't see in the regular court system. The other type of specialty court are specific courts, such as family court or probate court. And I like those as well, because then you get judges that specialize in family law or probate, and they tend to be a more efficient and knowledgeable court process than regular court that hears everything. But therapeutic courts, in my mind, are a fantastic thing, and they should be encouraged.
And question 2, is justice better served, do you think, when there are mandatory sentences for some crimes or when judges have a little more discretion in sentencing?
That's a tough question. And the reason why, I used to be a municipal court judge. So we did not have mandatory sentencings as other than for specifics like DUI. And we had full range of sentencing. I believe I approached every case with a unbiased opinion, willing to accept arguments from the parties, and with a race neutral approach as well. I don't think that happens all over. I used to be a prosecutor down in Texas. In Texas, when I was down there, they did not have mandatory sentencing. And I saw a disparity in sentencing, both by a jury that had a full range and a judge that had a full range, that I'm not a fan of. And so while I believe we can approach, the judge can approach sentencing in a race neutral, unbiased way, I don't think in application that it happens. And so standard sentencing takes that out of it. It gets the court a more appearance of a neutral position. That being said, our current standard sentencing has the ability to deviate up or deviate down based upon certain guidelines. And I think that gives the judges some abilities to adjust sentencing from the standards if it is appropriate. But standard sentencing gives the public an appearance that everybody gets a fair shake. Thank you.
And how would you rate the treatment of the poor in our local judicial system, especially in the courts?
I think the poor are disadvantaged in the court system and the legal system in general. And the reason why I say that is because there is a financial aspect to receiving justice. If you're charged with a crime, you can be appointed a public defender. We have some excellent public defenders in our community, but not all lawyers are created equal. Not all public defenders are created equal, and they would tell you that as well. And as a judge, I would see a difference in preparation, a difference in client communication with many, in the variety of courts, with public defenders versus not. In the area of civil law, family law, not having a lawyer puts you in an extreme disadvantage. Arguing your own family law case is a personal battle. You need that skilled, detached, but hopefully passionate individual to argue your case. And oftentimes I would see that when people would come to court economically disadvantaged, they would take an attitude of, this isn't going to work for me. And that's not the way it should be. When you enter the courtroom, regardless of your economic status, you should feel that you're getting your day, and you should feel that you're getting represented like you should. And I think our system needs to improve on that. Thank you.
And before you go, we would love to hear 1 minute of closing comments.
Okay. As your next Benton and Franklin County Superior Court judge, I will be a steward of your constitutional rights while holding criminals accountable. I want to be a public servant in the community that I was born and raised in. I will bring integrity, fairness, and impartiality to the bench. I am the candidate with the most judicial and legal experience. I currently serve as a judge pro tem in our Superior Court. I have been a prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, civil and family law litigator. My extensive experience and rational temperament make me the most qualified candidate. I believe that my years of military service give me a unique view and respect for our Constitution and our rights. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you. I am Dave Peterson, and I am asking for your support to be your next Benton Franklin County Superior Court judge.
Mr. Peterson, thank you very much for your time on this virtual forum today.
Thank you, and you have a great day too, Matt.
Speaking to another candidate in the race for Superior Court Judge, Position 1, we're now joined by Sean Sant. Thank you very much for being here, Sean.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you for the invite.
And first, we'd love to give our candidates an opportunity to introduce themselves or say whatever they would like to say in a 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank, of course, the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to get out there in this very challenging year of 2020. 10 years ago, I ran for Franklin County prosecuting attorney to make a difference in the community where my wife and I were raising our family. We have seen tremendous growth in our area, especially in Pasco during that time. While we see caseloads increase over the last 10 years, our crime rate continues to drop. I have worked in collaboration with our local law enforcement, community leaders, and county residents as we have improved relations as a community and furthered our crime-fighting efforts. I have worked my entire professional life dedicated to public service. At the age of 22, I began serving the community as a reserve police officer with the Richland Police Department. I later worked full-time law enforcement with the city of Prosser before going into active duty in the Air Force. I returned to the community and started out as a deputy prosecutor in Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. This year, I serve as the president of the Washington Association of Prosecuting Attorneys, who have recognized my leadership and dedication to improving our criminal justice system throughout the state. For the last 10 years, I have led Franklin County's largest legal department, taking to trial some of the county's most serious crimes. I also manage our civil, juvenile, and child support divisions. This has put me in the front seat of all aspects of our criminal justice and legal systems. I have served on committees and work groups trying to improve efficiency and the use of our court resources. This work has included expansion of our felony mental health diversion program. I have also served as a public defender. This has given me direct experience defending and representing clients accused of criminal cases from homicides down to misdemeanors. This well-rounded experience gives me the edge of understanding both perspectives in the courtroom. Tough decisions demand the experience of the person who was elected 10 years ago to serve the people. My 22 years of combined legal experience as a police officer, public defender, and prosecutor make me the right candidate to serve as your next Superior Court judge.
Thank you, Mr. Sant. And the first question for you is, do you support the need for some specialty courts like veterans courts, drug courts, family courts? Have you witnessed or read reports on the effectiveness of them? And if so, what do you want the public to know about these courts?
I think these specialty courts are extremely important. We have a specialty court in a sense in our community as the felony diversion program, which is something that is operated solely in the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. But we also have another program that we've seen, which is the felony mental health diversion program. I've also served actively with participating with mentoring veterans through the Benton County Veterans Court, which is a program that is specifically designed to help veterans who have been caught up in the legal system. These programs are extremely important because, one, I think they have proven their effectiveness. And one of the things that we've done in review of our own program and the felony diversion program, we reviewed cases from 2011 to 2017. And that study found that 84% of the individuals that have completed that program remain crime-free. That is a very substantial piece of evidence that these type of programs can work. Our program was geared specifically to give first-time felons an opportunity to avoid a criminal conviction and be able to basically resume and participate in normal community activities with the requirement of restitution, counseling and treatment, drug treatment, mental health treatment as may be required. These programs have been proven effectively, and we've seen that through our drug court program as well. And I'd like to see those programs continue to be funded because they've also been able to save the more expensive or costlier amount of services through the traditional court methods.
And question two, do you think justice is better served when there are mandatory sentences for the same crimes or when judges have a little more discretion in their sentencing?
Well, as a prosecutor, I have benefited from being in kind of the driver's seat, so to speak, of discretion. I believe that discretion has really started in our offices. We can evaluate cases as they come in and try to distinguish between the merits of a different case. For a quick example, if you were to take a theft in the second degree case or a theft in the first degree case where the threshold amount is $5,000, certainly there's going to be a difference in that crime if it was committed with a $6,000 amount versus somebody that may have violated a fiduciary position and stole $1 million over several years. But what happens if a person perhaps did that crime because they were paying for health care of a family member or a loved one, and they made attempts before being caught to try to repay that amount? So I think we have to be able to distinguish the facts of the case. Both of those scenarios real quickly both met the threshold of being a crime over $5,000. They would both fit within the standard range unless an exceptional sentence was proven. or made. I think a court, in combination with looking at standard sentencing ranges to get somewhat of a consistency, but also giving judges the flexibility to look at the individualized facts and circumstance of each one of those cases is extremely important. So I think a combination of those standardized sentences with judicial discretion is priority.
And last question, how would you rate the treatment of the poor in our local judicial system, especially in the courts?
Well, I think there's two questions. One of the questions that I receive as in my position as prosecutor obviously would focus a lot on the criminal side. People would raise the question of, do you receive the same accountability of justice with a public defense system versus having the same opportunity for retaining any attorney that someone desires? But I think the more prevalent question is access to justice on the civil side of the house. I have heard many individuals have inquired because you are entitled to expense at public expense if you qualify as indigent in the criminal sense. But what about those individuals that are facing eviction, facing landlord-tenant dispute, facing a divorce, and they don't feel that they have an equal position as their spouse that has now filed the divorce proceedings against them? What are their remedies? And I know there's a couple organizations in our community locally. We also have a legal aid clinic. There's also statewide initiatives that help promote the success of being able to provide those services. One of the things that I thought that should be explored would be able to expand how many attorneys can help participate low-income individuals. One way to do that would be able to create tax incentives so that individual attorneys would still be able to earn an income by offset of tax liabilities, but they would be able to serve the public that is standing in need on the lower income brackets. And I think that would best serve everyone.
And before we let you go, we'll give you the opportunity to have 1 minute of closing comments.
Well, thank you very much again for this unique opportunity to try to get out our message. I think one of the things that you've touched on is the importance as we look to the courts and we look at other options of trying to handle the increasing caseloads that we have in our community. One of the issues that you touched on was looking at some of these therapeutic courts. How can we help individuals? How can we improve accountability? How can we minimize the criminal activities, but also promote healthy and safe communities through criminal justice reforms or expansion of these type of programs? I have been in the driver's seat of that felony diversion program that we have expanded as a priority within our own office, and it's been very successful. One of the things that I think is important and we consider our qualifications in this particular race is that as prosecuting attorney, I have been responsible for reviewing thousands of cases while in office. And that has given me the opportunity to show that we have been fair and impartial in our administration of justice, and I'll do the same as a judge.
Well, thank you very much. That's Sean Sant, a candidate for Superior Court Judge. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much, Matt.
And that does it for this candidate forum. We want to thank all the candidates who were able to connect with us through Zoom on this virtual forum. Also want to thank the League of Women Voters for their work in organizing this forum and the fantastic questions for the candidates. Now, if you missed parts of this, you can be sure to rewatch it on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. You can also go to nwpb.org. Thanks for watching.